Hi, my name is Kylie, and I am a new booktube, and I'm really excited because I've loved all the booktubers for a really long time now, and so I'm really excited to finally be making my own videos because I've been wanting to for a really long time, and so I'm really glad I'm finally getting to that. So the first thing I want to do is a February wrap-up, and I read 4 books, and I read kind of some strange books this past month. Let's talk about them. The first book I read for February is Sunshine by Robin McKinley. And this is an adult book, and it is about a woman named Sunshine who lives in a world like ours, but there's also vampires and other beings, and magic and that sort of stuff is really negative in this world, and there's a special police that is in charge of taking care of vampires and other beings, and vampires are the very worst, and they try to kill vampires. And so this young woman is really stressed with her job because she works in a bakery, and she's just stressed with work and the things going on in her life, and she decides that she's going to go visit her lake cabin that she used to go to a lot when she was younger. And so she goes to the lake cabin, and while she's there, she gets kidnapped by a group of vampires. And she's taken to this mansion where she's chained up in a ballroom with another vampire. And she finds out that this vampire is the enemy to this group of vampires. And they kind of start getting to know each other while they're locked up, and they eventually escape. And this story talks about what happens after they escape and the things that they do to try to prevent this evil vampire group from finding them. And it's really interesting. I really like the world building in this book, and I really like the vampires the way they are, and I wish there was more vampire in this book because I really liked them, and I like the characters and the way it kind of leads into the story and the things involved. And I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I docked 1 star because there are some slow points in this book where nothing really happens, and it just talks a lot about her job as she works in the bakery and stuff. And there is a little romance in this book, but it's not, the plot isn't based on romance, and I actually really liked that. And I wish that Robin McKinley would make this into a series, but she's not going to as far as I know, and so that's a real shame, but this book was pretty good. The second book I read was an ebook called There Will Be Phlogiston by Alexis Hall. And this book is in the middle, I think, of a series, but you can also read it as a standalone, which is what I did. And it was a really strange book, but I did end up enjoying it. And it takes place in a kind of a Victorian steampunk era, and so that was really interesting because I do like steampunk. And it's about this main character who's a man who is bisexual, and he decides to go into the big city, sort of London area, to find a bride. Anyway, he finds the help of a rich man to teach him how to be polite and full of manners and that, so that he can really get into society and find himself a really nice rich woman who he can have kids with. But the rich man who he's staying with is gay, and they end up having an affair thing together and being together, but the rich man won't devote himself to the main character because being gay in this era is really not a good thing, and it's really looked down upon, and so he ends up not staying with him. And the main character goes out and ends up meeting this woman who is of high society, and she's really rich, and she's kind of snobby and kind of full of herself, and she gets engaged to another man, but she ends up also falling in love with our main character. And while this is taking place, she also meets the other rich man and finds out about the affair between him and the main character. and the rich man is still in love with our main character, and so it ends up becoming this threesome, and it's kind of strange, but I ended up actually kind of rooting for both relationships in this book, which is really strange for me because I usually don't like love triangles, but they end up in this kind of threesome together, and it's really different and really interesting. But I did end up liking the story, and I liked the characters, and I liked the world building, and also the steampunk aspects of the book. And I gave 4 out of 5 stars to There Will Be Phlogiston. Phlogiston. The third book I ended up reading was 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. And I never really planned on reading this book. I never had a desire to read the book. But the movie did just come out this month, and there's been a lot of hype and a lot of negativity about this book, and a lot of discussions that I really wanted to be able to jump into and discuss myself. And I also don't like judging a book until I've read it, especially when it's a book with a bunch of hype around it. And so I decided to go ahead and read this book, and I got through the first about 150 pages, and I was really not liking it because it was really Twilight to me, and I could point out every single character as a Twilight character, and I was really not liking that at all. And I know it was made as a Twilight fan fiction in the first place, but I didn't like all the coincidences. And so I put it down for a really long time, and I would pick it up and try to read about a chapter, and then I'd put it down and wait a day or two and pick it up. And so it just took me forever to get through that book because I was really not liking it, and I kept putting it down. And I ended up giving this book 1.5 out of 5 stars because it got the extra 0.5 star because it was different than what I expected. I had heard a lot of negativity, and I was expecting some really, really bad scenes and really bad scenarios, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought the plot was bad, and I didn't like the style of writing, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I could go into a whole review about 50 Shades of Grey and why I thought it was going to be worse, and why it was a little bit better than I had expected going into the book. The fourth book I read was also an ebook called Fade to Black by Tim McBain and L.T. Vargas. And I really, really liked this book, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And this book is about a 27-year-old man named Josh Grobnager, and he's a loner, and he likes to stay in his apartment with his cat, and he doesn't like going out very much, and he doesn't really have any friends or family, and he really just keeps to himself, and nobody would know who he is except for the fact that he has these seizures. And every time he has a seizure, he ends up in this kind of dream world where he always has this same dream where he wakes up and he's hanging by his foot by a rope or like a noose, and he cuts himself down every time, and when he gets down, he's in this alleyway, and this strange, mysterious figure in a cloak always chases him down and ends up brutally killing him or strangling him, and then he wakes up from his seizure. And one day, he ends up having a seizure in a grocery store, and when he wakes up, he tries to run away from the store because he doesn't want to go to the hospital even though he's having these seizures, because he really doesn't like people. And a man from the grocery store ends up following him and takes him to his house to make sure he's okay. And that man's name is Glenn, and he's this older man, and he has even more cats than Josh. And they end up starting to kind of talk about his seizures, and Josh learns that Glenn's daughter has gone missing, and she was involved with the cults. And when Glenn goes to the cult and tries to figure out where she's gone missing, and he tries to interview like all these cults trying to figure out what happened to her, he finds out that they know who Josh Grobnager is, and they know about his seizures, and they know about his dream, and they're after him, and we don't know why. So the story kind of takes place after that because Josh tries to understand his dreams and his seizures and why he's having them and why the cult is so interested in him, and his life ends up being in danger both in the dream world and in reality. and it just kind of follows that story and a bunch of stuff happens. I don't want to spoil it, but it was really good. The characters were really relatable and really fun. Some of the language was not very good, but it was a really funny book and I really enjoyed it. So those were the 4 books that I read this month. And so now on to my March TBR. And I have 5 books that I'm hoping for sure to get to, and then some other books I might get to, but I'm just going to talk about the 5 books that I hope to get to this month. And so the first book I'm hoping to read is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Allar Sayans. Sayans? I hope I say that right. I'm not sure. But I know that Katerina has her book club, which I just joined, and this book was for January and February, but I just got it, and I haven't had time to sit and read it yet, so I'm hoping to read it this month instead, and I'm really excited to read it. And what I know is that it's about 2 boys who end up getting to know each other, and I know that they're really opposites in nature, but they come together and it's supposed to be just this really great story, and I'm really excited to read this book. The second book that I'm hoping to read this month is The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. I read The Hobbit in January, and it was really, really good, and I loved the story, and I loved the writing style, and so I'm really excited to be able to start the Lord of the Rings series, because I just bought the book set, and so I'm hoping to start this book this month, and I'm really excited to read it because I really liked The Hobbit, and I can't believe I haven't already read this series. The third book I hope to read is Tess of the D'Urberville by Thomas Hardy. Every month I try to read a classical book or a biography or autobiography, but last month I didn't get to it, but this month I for sure will. So I've chosen Tess of the D'Urberville, and I already had it on my shelf, and so I'm excited to read this book. I've heard some controversial reviews, and so I'm hoping that I'll like it, but we'll just have to wait and see. The fourth book that I want to read for March is an ebook, and it's Blood White by Tim McBain and L.T. Vargas. And it's the second book after Fade to Black. And I really liked Fade to Black, so of course I want to read the second book now, and I'm hoping to get to that one. And then the fifth book that I'm hoping to read this month is The Gemini Effect by Chuck Grossart. And it is a Kindle first book that is free for this month if you have a Kindle. And I know it's an apocalypse book about like a virus that gets freed from a laboratory or something, and the world's in danger of the whole world just dying, and it's kind of a cliche sounding book, but I've been in the mood for an apocalypse book, and so I've decided that I'll probably read that book this month. And so those are my TBR books for this month that I hope to get to, and we'll see, and you'll find out, I guess, at the end of March when I wrap up my books. And so thank you so much for watching this video. I'm really excited to be here on Booktube finally, and I will see you all later for the next wrap up in TBR. So bye!